"What money?" she asked, and the room went still. It was Christmas Eve in suburban Ohio, after 6 grueling months on a medical deployment overseas. Dr. Lauren Mitchell had just returned home, hoping for a quiet, heartwarming reunion with her 18-year-old daughter, Emily, and her aging parents, Carol and Frank. Her younger sister, Tracy, had offered to host dinner at Lauren's childhood home, the same house. Lauren had let Tracy stay in rent-free while she was away, over dry turkey and under flickering kitchen lights. Lauren asked the question that had weighed on her for months. "Emily, was the $1,400 I sent each month enough?" Emily froze, then blinked. "What money?" The silence that followed was deafening. Carol went pale. Frank gripped his water glass. Tracy reached for the wine like it held the answer. Lauren's heart sank. For half a year, she'd sent money religiously, $400 for Emily's college expenses, and $1,000 split between her parents and the mortgage on the house Tracy was living in. But now, Emily's confusion revealed a chilling truth. The people Lauren trusted most had kept her daughter in the dark, letting her believe her mother had abandoned her dot in that moment. Lauren didn't shout. She didn't storm out. She simply looked around that dinner table, the one she used to sit at as a child, and waited. Because she already knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. And it was just the beginning. I thought she was just being a dramatic teenager, until she looked me in the eyes and said, "What money, Mom?" That's when everything cracked wide open. After 6 months on deployment as a trauma nurse overseas, Dr. Lauren Mitchell came home expecting hugs, stories, maybe a dry turkey dinner. Instead, she found silence and a daughter who believed she'd been left behind. Emily, just 18 and in her first semester of college, sat across from Lauren at the same old oak table they'd shared since she was a kid. Lauren had worked grueling double shifts, risked her health, and sent $1 $400 every month, $400 for Emily's tuition and living costs, and $1,000 to help her parents, Carol and Frank, keep the family home afloat while her sister Tracy stayed there, rent-free. But Emily never got the money, not a single cent. Instead, her own grandparents told her not to expect help, that her mom meant well but couldn't afford anything. So Emily picked up 2 jobs, skipped meals, and lived every day believing her mother had chosen not to care. Lauren didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She just looked at the people around that table, people she'd once trusted more than anyone, and waited. Because in that moment, she realized this wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal, and it had been happening for months. Lauren didn't sleep that night. After the dinner, she and Emily left quietly. No shouting, no slamming doors, just 2 women walking away from a table full of silence and denial. In the car, Lauren's hands trembled on the wheel as she tried to process what had just happened. Emily stared out the window, her jaw clenched, her voice barely above a whisper when she finally asked, "Did you really send it? Every month?" "Yes," Lauren said. $400 for you. The rest to the house. I used Grandpa's account. It was easier that way with the overseas transfer." Emily gave a quiet nod, but didn't speak again. Her silence was louder than any accusation. For months, she'd been convinced her own mother had forgotten her. Lauren could see it now, how tired Emily looked, how small she'd become from carrying too much, too soon. It wasn't just physical exhaustion. It was emotional neglect. At the small motel on the edge of town, Lauren paid for a room without hesitation. It had 2 modest beds and a coffee machine that looked like it hadn't worked since the early 2000s. Emily kicked off her shoes and sat at the edge of one bed. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just said quietly, "I couldn't afford groceries. I worked nights and skipped lectures. Every time I thought about asking you for help, I heard Grandma's voice in my head, 'Don't bother your mom. She's doing her best.'" Lauren sat down beside her, not touching, just close enough. She made you feel like asking for help was a burden, she said. Emily nodded. So I stopped asking, she whispered. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Lauren opened her laptop and logged into her bank accounts. The first thing she did was cancel the automatic $400 transfer to her parents. Then she opened the mortgage portal, the one connected to the house her sister Tracy had begged to stay in. Tracy had promised to take care of the payments while Lauren was away. Just until I get on my feet, she'd said. I'll maintain the place so you don't have to worry. But there it was in black and white. No mortgage payments had been made in months. Lauren's stomach sank. Even worse, someone had filed for a temporary hardship pause using Lauren's name. The application included forged information and a fake signature. Her identity had been stolen not by a stranger, but by her own sister. The betrayal ran deeper than just money. They had stolen from her daughter. They had let her suffer. They watched Emily burn herself out working 2 jobs while they cashed the support money. Like it was their right. Lauren's chest tightened with guilt, rage, and something else clarity. Her parents had manipulated her. Her sister had taken advantage of her. But now it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Emily, the young woman she had raised with everything she had, the one she left to serve her country, believing that her family would protect her in her absence. They hadn't. And now Lauren knew what she had to do. The next step wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would be just in 3 days. She would be standing at her sister's front door, but not as the older sister who'd always said yes, not as the daughter who kept giving out of guilt, not as the woman they assumed would stay silent. This time, she was showing up with a liar and a folder full of receipts. Because the truth had come out, nothing about their family would ever be the same again. 3 days later, Lauren stood outside the front door of the house she still legally owned but hadn't seen in over half a year. She had come prepared. Beside her stood Ethan Ross, an old friend who'd once been a struggling law student she helped quietly with bills when she was working night shifts. Now, he was a sharp, battle-tested attorney with an excellent memory and today, her ally. Under his arm was a manila folder, thick with evidence, bank transfers, mortgage records, emails, and a printed copy of the hardship pause someone had, filed under her name. The door opened before she could knock twice. Tracy, her younger sister, blinked in surprise, then gave a tight smile. Well, look who finally came home, Tracy said, half laughing like nothing had happened. I brought you something, Lauren replied coolly, handing her the envelope. Tracy opened it and read aloud, eviction notice. She scoffed. That's cute. Ethan stepped forward, legally binding. 30 days. Tracy rolled her eyes. Relax. I'm moving out anyway. Already bought my own place. Got the keys last week. Lauren froze. You what? Tracy grinned. Treated myself for Christmas. Guess saving money on rent pays off. Lauren's eyes darted past her sister into the living room, boxes stacked high, kitchen dishes being wrapped, and there, standing, in the kitchen like nothing was wrong, were Carol and Frank, their parents, carefully packing silverware and glass bowls that didn't even belong to them. What's going on here? Lauren asked, voice low and even. We're just helping her move, Carol said cheerfully, as if everything was perfectly normal. With what money? Lauren demanded. How did she afford a down payment from not wasting it on rent? Tracy said with a shrug. I was smart. You should try it sometime. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You mean the mortgage you promised to pay? Tomato, Tracy said, dismissively waving her hand. Lauren turned to her parents. And you're fine with this? She needed a home, Frank replied, folding his arms. You weren't using it. I wasn't using it, Lauren snapped. Because I was risking my life overseas and sending money to support all of you. Oh, please, Carol scoffed. You act like we forced you. You took the money meant for Emily, Lauren said through clenched teeth. Tracy shrugged. She was fine. Working 2 jobs, sure, but she didn't starve. She thought I abandoned her. Lauren shouted, finally losing her composure. She didn't die, Carol muttered. Like that made everything acceptable. Ethan stepped forward. Again, handing Tracy a second envelope, this one much thicker. What's this? She asked, already annoyed. A formal demand, Ethan said. Repayment of 6 months' mortgage, restitution of stolen funds, and damages. That totals $16,800. Plus interest. Tracy laughed. Damages? Are you serious? You impersonated her to pause the loan. Ethan said flatly, that's not just unethical, it's criminal. Tracy gave a half-hearted shrug. You should be grateful. I saved the house from foreclosure. You act like I trashed the place. Carol crossed her arms. She's your sister. Why are you doing this to her? Lauren looked at her mother and said coldly, you told my daughter I didn't care about her. She was being dramatic. She skipped meals. She cried herself to sleep. She thought I had walked away from her, and you stood there and let her believe it. Frank said nothing. Carol looked away. Tracy went back to her boxes. Lauren looked around the room at the china they didn't own, the furniture she had paid for. The family who had lied to her and stolen from her child and took a deep breath. I'll see you in court then. She turned and walked out. Because sometimes the only way to protect your child is to stop protecting the people who hurt them. The courtroom was colder than Lauren expected, sterile walls, humming fluorescent lights, and an air of tension that felt years in the making. The opposing attorney, a middle-aged man in an ill-fitting suit and scuffed loafers, stood first. Your Honor, he said confidently, the money in question was a gift. Voluntary, recurring, and without contractual terms. There's no legal obligation to return a gift. Lauren almost laughed. A gift? Was that what they were calling? The $1,400 she sent each month money meant for her daughter's food, housing, and textbooks? Her attorney, Ethan, stood calmly. We have documentation showing otherwise, he said, handing the judge a neatly organized folder. Text messages, email records. All of them clearly state the purpose of these payments for $100 specifically for Lauren's daughter, Emily, for her college expenses, and $1,000 to cover the mortgage of the home Ms. Mitchell owns. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, flipped through the documents. Let's see the messages. Inside were screenshots. Make sure Emily's money gets to her on the 1st. Tuition is due next week. Please don't miss it. If I'm late by a day, just send it anyway, same amount as always. The opposing lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Then, in a twist Lauren could only describe as shameless, they changed their defense entirely. The sister's lawyer claimed that Lauren had called Tracy in a panic about losing the house and asked her to file the mortgage hardship pause on her behalf. That Tracy had merely stepped in to help with paperwork while Lauren was overseas. Ethan didn't even flinch. Your Honor, he said, that directly contradicts the signed agreement stating Tracy would pay the mortgage in exchange for living in the home. Do you have proof? The judge asked. Ethan nodded. We do. Then he pulled out his trump card, the audio recording Lauren had captured on the night. She served Tracy the eviction notice. It played aloud for the whole courtroom to hear. Ethan's voice. You impersonated her to pause the loan. Tracy's voice. Laughing smugly. You should be grateful I paused it for you so it wouldn't go into foreclosure. A silence settled across the courtroom like dust. The judge leaned back slowly in her chair, her expression unreadable. Well, she said, that's enlightening. From that moment, their defense unraveled like a cheap sweater. They had no response, no justification, no ground left to stand on. The ruling came down swiftly, full repayment of all misused funds, restitution for the identity theft, and coverage of Lauren's legal fees. It was everything Lauren had hoped for, but there was one final, bitter twist. Tracy didn't have the money. She had spent all of it, every last dollar, on the down payment for her brand new house. In court, she pleaded, begged, offered to pay in installments, said she'd go bankrupt, claimed it wasn't fair. The judge didn't blink. "You committed fraud, Ms. Mitchell," she said. "This court doesn't exist to protect people from the consequences of their own choices." 2 weeks later, after Tracy failed to meet the first court-ordered deadline, the judge authorized a property transfer. The house Tracy had just purchased, the one she'd bragged about, moved into, and decorated, was legally reassigned to Lauren. The equity she had paid lined up almost perfectly with the amount owed. Lauren didn't celebrate. There were no victory speeches, no vindication monologue. But when she stepped inside that house, now hers, lawfully and rightfully, she didn't feel guilt. She felt peace. This wasn't revenge. It was repair. The money Tracy had stolen to build her dream was now funding Emily's reality. Rent, groceries, tuition, a roof over her head. And for the first time in years, Lauren no longer felt like she was treading water. She was standing firm, steady, and finally free. Lauren didn't waste time. The day after the property was legally transferred into her name, she contacted her rental agent. Within weeks, both homes, the one she had originally owned and the one her sister had purchased with stolen funds, were generating monthly income, not as trophies, not out of spite, but as tools to rebuild something that had been broken for far too long. The rent from one house went directly to Emily. It covered her housing, groceries, books, tuition, everything Lauren had meant for it to cover all along. Emily, for the first time since starting college, could finally breathe. She quit her second job. The dark circles under her eyes began to fade. She wasn't bouncing between late-night shifts and 8 a.m. lectures anymore. She had time to rest, to study, to dream again. When Lauren called and told her the court's decision, Emily didn't gloat. She didn't even sound surprised. "So we won?" she asked quietly. "We did," Lauren replied. There was a pause on the line. Then Emily added, "I already gave notice at my second job, but would you mind if I kept the barista job on weekends? Just one shift? I kinda like it." Lauren laughed softly. "Of course. Whatever brings you peace." Peace. That was a word Lauren hadn't truly felt in years. She returned to deployment for one final 6-month contract, not out of desperation, but out of choice. She wanted a financial cushion, a sense of control. This time, she wasn't running from betrayal or trying to patch up broken promises. She was building something solid for the future. Every Sunday, she and Emily video called. They talked about medical school, professors, classmates. Emily proudly showed off her textbooks, her stethoscope, her tidy dorm room. Sometimes she would hold up a homemade sandwich and laugh, saying, "Mom, I bought real bread this week." And Lauren would nod and smile because she understood. When you've been drowning for so long, simply breathing feels like a luxury. She watched as her daughter slowly came back to life, eyes brighter, voice lighter. She was still the same girl who had suffered in silence, but now she had space to grow, to heal, and to hope. 6 months later, Lauren came home for good. Emily met her at the airport with a warm, steady hug. No tears, no theatrics. Just 2 women who had survived something hard together and come out stronger. They found a small apartment near Emily's campus for Lauren, not to move in with her daughter, but to be close enough. They had dinner once a week, sometimes more. Nothing fancy, just pasta nights, takeout tacos, laughter over mismatched dishes, but everything felt richer now. One night, as Emily stirred a pot of marinara sauce, she said, "I blocked Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Tracy." Lauren didn't flinch. "Good," she said. "I don't feel guilty," Emily added. "You shouldn't." They clinked their forks together like glasses of champagne, not to celebrate revenge, but to toast freedom. The house they tried to steal, It was now paying for Emily's future. As for Lauren, she didn't miss birthdays or forced family holidays. She didn't miss the guilt trips, the excuses, or the weight of always having to prove her worth. Some people say family is everything, but Lauren knew better now. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who never lets you drown when they know you're sinking. And as she looked across the dinner table at her daughter strong, steady, and finally safe, Lauren knew she had chosen right. It didn't happen all at once, but slowly, something inside Lauren began to shift. For the first time in years, there was no check to send home, no hidden guilt pressing down on her chest. The emotional bookkeeping that had defined so much of her adult life, have I done enough, given enough, proved enough, was gone. The Sunday calls with Emily continued, lighter now, filled with updates on classes, new study groups, and even the occasional awkward date story. Lauren listened, laughed, and let herself feel proud not just of her daughter, but of herself. She had broken the cycle. One Sunday afternoon, over a plate of reheated lasagna and a pile of flashcards, Emily said it almost offhandedly, "I don't think about them anymore." Lauren looked up. "Grandma, Grandpa, Tracy," Emily clarified, her tone even, almost clinical. "I don't spend time being mad. I don't cry about it. I just don't have space for it in my life." Lauren exhaled slowly. "You don't have to. You're not obligated to carry their weight." Emily nodded. "I know. For a long time, I thought if I could just be good enough, they'd finally see me. But I don't need that anymore." Lauren reached across the table and gently squeezed her daughter's hand. This time, Emily didn't pull away. The healing had taken time. It hadn't been linear. There were nights when Emily still woke up in a sweat, certain she'd missed a deadline or forgotten a shift at a job she no longer worked. There were moments when Lauren still caught herself pausing before a purchase, wondering if she should be sending that money to someone else instead. But the difference now? They had permission to stop giving away pieces of themselves to people who had never deserved them. Lauren remembered a moment from her own past. She was maybe 9 or 10, when her mother, Carol, had snapped at her for crying after a hard day at school. "Be grateful," Carol had hissed. "We rescued you." Asterisk, it was a phrase Lauren had heard 1,000 times growing up. Be grateful. Be small. Be quiet. And for years, she had believed that being loved meant being indebted. That safety came with strings. That speaking up made you ungrateful. But not anymore. She had raised Emily differently. She had made mistakes, sure big ones, but she had always shown up. Even from thousands of miles away, she had tried to be the mother she never had. Now, watching her daughter reclaim her sense of self not through rage, but through release, Lauren felt something unfamiliar. Peace. Asterisk, they didn't talk much about Tracy anymore, or the house that was now paying for Emily's education, or the lawsuit that had quietly closed with one last bank transfer and a court-stamped notice. That the case was settled in full. There was no need. Some battles don't end with grand declarations or sweeping apologies. Some just end when you choose not to open the door again. Lauren and Emily had opened a different kind of door, a quieter one. The kind that led to a tiny apartment filled with secondhand furniture, reheated pasta, and honest laughter. The kind that closed gently behind them each night and never let in what they'd already left behind. And that was more than enough. For months, Lauren waited to feel something, some flicker of longing, some pang of guilt for the family she'd left behind. But it never came. She didn't miss the birthdays or the forced phone calls filled with polite small talk and veiled criticism. She didn't miss the holidays crowded with tension and whispered judgments. Most of all, she didn't miss the version of herself she had to become to survive around them. Agreeable, apologetic, always trying to keep the peace while slowly falling apart inside. Instead, she found joy in the silence. No more cryptic texts from her mother. No backhanded compliments from Tracy. No awkward pauses on the phone with her father. pretending like things hadn't happened that did. She blocked all of them. And not in anger, but in protection. Emily did the same, without hesitation. One day, over dinner, she simply said, I unfriended Grandma, and Grandpa, and Aunt Tracy. Lauren raised an eyebrow. How'd it feel? Emily shrugged, like taking off shoes that never really fit. They both laughed, and that laugh, it wasn't the kind that came from spite or revenge. It came from relief. From release. Their lives became full in the ways that actually mattered. Lauren found new rhythms: morning walks, weekend farmers markets, quiet dinners with friends who didn't need her to explain her past to feel seen. Emily dove deeper into her studies, surrounded by people who valued her mind and respected her boundaries. One Friday night, they met at a small Italian place tucked behind the library. Over garlic knots and iced tea, Emily set down her fork and said, I used to think family was something you just had to live with even when it hurt. Lauren nodded slowly. Yeah, me too. But now, Emily continued, I think family is who shows up when it counts, who listens, who sees you, and doesn't try to use that against you. Lauren reached for her hand. I'm so proud of the woman you're becoming. Emily smiled, eyes warm and calm. You know what's funny? I'm proud of you too. It hit Lauren like a soft wave, unexpected, but cleansing. For years, she'd worked herself raw trying to earn the love of people who treated her like a convenience. And yet, here she was, being seen and respected by the one person who mattered most. The past hadn't vanished. It still lived in quiet corners, the ache of abandonment, the sting of betrayal. But it no longer ruled them. They'd learned that you don't have to carry everything just because someone hands it to you. One evening, as they cleared dishes in Emily's tiny apartment, Lauren paused at the window. The lights of the campus glowed in the distance, students walking in twos, and threes under the soft glow of street lamps. Emily looked over her shoulder. What are you thinking about? Lauren smiled. I'm just grateful that we made it through, that we chose each other. Emily didn't respond right away. She simply wrapped her arms around her mother's waist and held on, and in that still, quiet moment, Lauren knew they didn't need approval or apologies. They had each other, and that was enough. They say closure doesn't come all at once. It arrives slowly like morning light through half-open blinds, quiet, gradual. Sometimes you don't even realize it's happened until you catch yourself laughing freely, sleeping deeper, or going an entire day without replaying old pain in your mind. That's how it was for Lauren. One crisp Saturday morning, she sat on the porch of her modest apartment just a few blocks from Emily's campus. The sun was rising over the trees, and her coffee was still too hot to sip. But she held the mug tightly, breathing in the steam, letting it fill the spaces once occupied by grief. The past no longer had claws in her skin. It was still there, but now it was just history, not a haunting. Emily was thriving. She had finished her second year of med school with honors, had friends who cherished her, and a quiet confidence that came not from being rescued but from surviving. One evening, over a simple home-cooked dinner, Emily asked, Do you think we went too far? Lauren looked up from her plate. For what? You know, cutting them off, suing Tracy, taking the house. Lauren didn't answer right away. She reached for her glass of water and took a long sip. Then she said, Some people say family is everything, but I've learned that family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the ones who never let your child go hungry, who don't lie to her, who don't steal from her and then call it love. Emily nodded slowly. I don't feel guilty. I never imagined we'd be here. Just the two of us. And okay. Lauren smiled. That's the best part. We are okay. And they were, truly. The house they reclaimed through the court, it was now funding Emily's future. The passive income paid for her books, her meals, and the little luxuries she once denied herself, like the occasional weekend getaway or a decent pair of shoes that weren't on clearance. Lauren no longer walked on eggshells or explained herself to people who twisted her love into leverage. She found joy in simplicity, a well-cooked meal, a long walk, the sound of her daughter's laughter down the hall. She also found something she'd never had before: permission to choose peace over obligation. There were no more forced holiday gatherings or calls laced with guilt. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. She didn't even check her parents' birthdays on the calendar anymore. And when people asked kindly but curiously, "Do you still talk to your family?" Lauren would smile and say, "Every day. She's sitting right across from me." Because that was her family now. Her daughter, her home, her peace. Some might say she went too far, but Lauren knew better. She hadn't gone too far at all. In fact, for the first time in her life, she had finally gone far enough. "What money?" she asked, and in that single moment, my entire world tilted. I had spent 6 months away, saving lives on deployment, sending $1,400 every month to support my daughter's education and help my family stay afloat. I thought I was doing the right thing, sacrificing time, comfort, even presents, so my daughter wouldn't have to worry. But at Christmas dinner, when she looked at me with tired, honest eyes and told me she'd never received a dime, the silence around the table said everything. My parents had taken the money. My sister had lied. And my daughter had spent her first year of college believing I had abandoned her. No rage, no shouting, just quiet betrayal. And from that moment on, I made a choice not just to reclaim what was mine, but to protect what mattered most: my daughter's trust. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrifice, it's courage. Courage to say enough, courage to stand up, even to family, courage to choose peace over guilt. Because family isn't who shares your blood, it's who never lets you fall alone. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own peace? Share your story. You're not alone. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss the next chapter. You never know, the next story might be yours.